You don't exist. That's not a metaphor. That's the operational reality you accepted the day you signed a document that most Americans don't know exists, in a building that doesn't appear on public maps, in front of a man whose name you were never told. Your personnel file is classified at a level that requires separate authorization to access. Your cover identity has a credit history, a social media footprint, a university degree from a real institution that will confirm your attendance if anyone calls. None of it is you. All of it is yours. You came to the agency through a path that looks ordinary from the outside. You were recruited junior year of college by a professor who wasn't exactly a professor, who had noticed something in you over 2 semesters that you hadn't fully noticed in yourself, a facility for reading people, for pattern recognition, for staying calm in situations that unsettled everyone else in the room. He asked you to coffee. The conversation lasted 4 hours. 3 weeks later, you were filling out a security clearance application 60 pages long and beginning the process of disappearing, gradually from the version of your life your family thought they understood. The hiring process takes 2 years. Background investigators speak to everyone you have ever known, childhood friends, former employers, ex-partners, neighbors from apartments you lived in for 6 months a decade ago. They test your psychology in ways that are not announced as tests. They induce stress in controlled environments and watch how you manage it. They ask you the same questions in different formats across different sessions and compare the answers for consistency, because consistency is the baseline and deviation from it is information. You pass everything. What you learn from passing everything is that you are, in certain measurable ways, unusual. You file that away. It will be useful. Paramilitary operations training is not located where you expected it to be and is not called what you expected it to be called. The farm is the name civilians knew from books and documentaries. What happens there is more comprehensive and more serious than any account you've read made it sound. You spend months learning the architecture of deception, how to build a cover identity so thoroughly that you inhabit it rather than perform it, how to surveil a target across a city without being seen, how to detect surveillance on yourself, how to lose a tail in a vehicle and on foot, how to communicate through dead drops and signals that look like nothing to anyone who doesn't know what they're looking at. You learn to fight, not in the sport fighting way, but in the close quarters way, efficient, brutal, designed to end situations rather than control them. You learn to shoot everything, pistols, rifles, weapons you'll never carry openly because the country you'll be operating in doesn't know you're there. You learn explosives, not as a primary tool, but as a necessity. What they are, what they do, how to recognize them, how to survive proximity to someone who has one. You learn to drive in ways that your driver's license does not reflect. You learn emergency medicine, the trauma kind. The kind you perform on yourself or on someone else in a location where a hospital is not an option. You learn languages. You already had 2. You acquire functional proficiency in a 3rd during training, and you keep studying after, because language is not just communication, it's access to the way people think, the idioms that reveal assumptions, the gaps between what someone says and what the grammar of their native tongue would have made them say differently. You listen to people not just for content, but for structure. The structure tells you more. Your first posting overseas is a country that the State Department considers a hardship assignment, which means the embassy staff gets extra pay and a shorter rotation, and you get none of that because you're not embassy staff, not officially, not in any way that appears on any roster. You operate undercover as a business consultant for a company that does enough real business to sustain scrutiny. Your office is real. Your meetings are real. The reports you file are real. Everything is real. And everything is a platform for the thing that is never written down anywhere. You are recruiting. That's the core of what a case officer does, finding people who have access to things your government needs to know, building relationships with them, persuading them through means that range from ideological alignment to financial incentive to a carefully cultivated sense of personal loyalty to you specifically, and then handling them over months and years of clandestine meetings in locations that neither of you will ever acknowledge publicly. You are asking people to betray their countries. Sometimes they're colleagues. Sometimes they're families. You ask this in the nicest possible way, and you mean it, and you are genuinely good at it. The ethics of this work don't resolve neatly. You thought about them before you signed on, and you think about them still, not with paralysis, but with the ongoing attention that serious work requires. You are collecting intelligence that prevents things, attacks, miscalculations, escalations that kill people who will never know they were protected by information gathered at risk in a city they've never visited. You tell yourself this because it's true. You also know that the people who help you are taking risks you can't fully protect them from, and that sometimes things go wrong in ways that cannot be undone, and that the accounting for all of this is complicated and incomplete and probably always will be. You have run operations that worked exactly as planned and left no trace. They are not the ones that stay with you. The ones that stay with you were the ones where something shifted. A surveillance team that picked up your asset leaving a meeting, a communication channel that was dirtier than assessed, a source who got nervous and made a decision you didn't anticipate. You have sat in a safe house at 3 in the morning running contingency plans on problems that had no clean solutions, and chosen the least bad option from a list of bad options, and lived with the outcome. That is most of the job. Most of the job is choosing from bad options quickly and then not second-guessing in ways that compromise the next decision. The isolation accumulates in ways you didn't fully anticipate. You can't tell people what you do. You can't tell them where you've been, or what you've seen, or why certain things affect you in certain ways. Your relationships operate on a version of you that is accurate as far as it goes, and incomplete in ways that matter. You've watched other officers lose marriages to this, not to infidelity or neglect in the ordinary sense, but to the fundamental impossibility of full intimacy with someone who cannot know who you actually are. You manage it, some days better than others. You've been threatened. You've been made, your cover examined too closely by a counterintelligence service that was better than the assessment suggested. You've had to abort operations, burn assets, leave cities quickly and quietly with nothing but the legend on your passport and the training that tells you how to look unhurried when you're moving very fast. You felt the specific quality of fear that comes not from immediate physical danger, but from the slow realization that someone is several steps ahead of where you thought they were. That fear is cold and precise. It focuses you in ways nothing else does. You use it. The black side of the work, the operations that exist in no budget line that Congress can read, they're authorized through channels so narrow and so classified that fewer people know about them than know nuclear launch codes. Those operations ask different things of you. They ask you to act with no safety net of deniability. They ask you to make decisions in the field that in a different context would be called something else by people who weren't there and don't have the information you had in the moment. You make those decisions. You make them carefully. You make them with the full weight of what they mean, and you don't look for ways to make them feel smaller than they are. There are people in the world who are safer because of things you've done that will never be acknowledged. There are also things you've done that you revisit at specific hours of the night when sleep doesn't come easily. Both of those are true. The agency doesn't offer you a framework for reconciling them because no framework exists. You build your own. You reinforce it where it needs reinforcing. You keep working. The career has stages you didn't fully see from the beginning. The early years are field work, running assets, conducting operations, living inside cover identities with the discipline of an actor who never breaks character and the vigilance of someone who knows the consequences if they do. The middle years are management, running officers, overseeing networks, sitting in headquarters conference rooms with people who have never been in the field and explaining things that don't translate well into the language of bureaucracy. The tension between those two worlds is constant. The field produces the intelligence. Headquarters decides what to do with it. The gap between those two functions is where things go wrong. You will retire eventually. You will receive no ceremony that can be announced. Your name will appear in no public record of service. The people you trained with, some of them, will attend a quiet gathering in a room you've been in before, and someone will say something true about what you gave. And you will shake hands with people who know exactly who you are at exactly what it cost, and that will be the acknowledgement. On the drive home, you will pass through ordinary streets full of ordinary people doing ordinary things in complete safety. the specific safety that comes from the world being slightly more stable than it would otherwise be, for reasons they will never know and you will never tell them. You will stop at a light. Someone will be walking a dog. A kid will be on a bicycle. The light will change. You'll keep driving. Same as always. Invisible. Effective. Everywhere and nowhere, in the way that only a certain kind of person ever learns to be. You chose this. Every single day you chose it again. That has to be enough. And it is.